I'm Alfonso Winker.
And I'm Trina Olson. And together, we're the co-founders of Team Dynamics.
And this is Behave. Welcome to episode 7 of Behave. Hi, Trina.
Hi.
So today I was thinking we could talk about change. And for the first segment, I want to talk about individual change. So like, what does it really take for a person to change?
Yeah, I love change.
I love it too. We're changing all the time. And I think we are inviting people in our practice through this podcast, through the content that we do, to really dig into becoming someone with a different set of tools and bigger menu all the time, and really a new set of perspectives and behaviors. And we were talking with producer Levi before recording about sort of what is the sentiment or essence of this conversation. And I think we're experiencing people doing so much finger pointing. And I think it would be fun and provocative to really focus on what does it take to be a person who is committed to transformation and to change, and releasing the desire to think that it's everyone else's job or turn to change.
Yeah. And you know, I love a word study, and I think you've probably heard me use the word evolution a lot, or alignment, or adjustment. I say tweak a lot. So when I think about changes going well for myself, it is about evolving closer to who I believe I'm capable of being. So whether that's about aligning my behavior with my values, it's about deepening relationships with people I care about, or learning about things I want to know about. And so I think way too often, change is being thought of as something to just fear and resist outright, right? When in fact, I think a whole lot of people in the U.S. workplace have already developed the skills that are necessary to be excellent change makers, change agents, and to continue to evolve. And I think one of the most important transferable skills is to evaluate as you go. And I think a whole lot of us are used to doing that with our writing, what we're producing, how something we're doing is landing, right? We're thinking to ourselves, is this working? Is it not working? Could I do it better? Could I do it different? What would make it even more impactful? And so when I think about things that have ever inspired me to change, part of it is recognizing that it's going to be a process. And so it's my job to think, oh, does this change feel great? Is it hard because it's new? Yeah. How about for you? When you think about what change has felt like or is feeling like, because you're still absolutely in an evolution.
So you were saying something about believing that you can change, sort of a belief in oneself. And when I was prepping some notes, I wrote down desire and sort of my own desire to be different.
Sure.
So certainly we can be in workplaces or relationships where someone is telling us you have to change.
It's like when you tell me we have to use a new piece of technology.
Yes.
It's like that.
Those are rules, right? Those are ways of being.
Yeah.
But then I think to be changed, it's not performative.
Right.
So I can use the new database and really still hate it.
Yeah.
I cannot say terrible things about women at work and still think them.
Sure.
And so when I think about becoming a changed person, and transforming in my relationship to race and gender, and sort of getting internalized racism out of me, undoing the misogynist programming that I've gotten from just being raised a boy and living as a man in this world, I have to have a desire to be different.
Yeah.
And then I have to get to a place where I catch myself with old lines of thinking and say, like, we don't think like that.
Right.
And come up with new behavior sets in ways that are not performative. And so to go from desire to what I would call practice, and actually just saying that reminded me of my meditation practice because meditation actually creates new paths in your brain.
Right. You're like carving new little holes.
Nodules?
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to think about how we sort of cast that vision of what's going to be better or different. And I'm sure we sound like a broken record, but it's very much on purpose because it's how we live our lives, which is, what's the goal?
Right.
Changing for change's sake? I mean, maybe changing because you're bored. Okay. But is the way you're doing something effective? Right? Are you actually limited? Do you need to be more creative? And I loved what you said about naming and noticing. So an example is that for most of my career, I've been in jobs that involve some form of fundraising, right? I have to raise money to cover staff for the project we're doing, for the thing we need to go print at Kinko's, right? Whatever it is. And I started noticing that subconsciously, because I would notice this in photographs, I was always wearing pants when I was fundraising. I'm a person who wears a lot of different kinds of clothes. So pants, skirts, dresses, tight stuff, loose stuff, colorful stuff, pattern stuff, breathable stuff for sure. But yeah. I wear a lot of different kind of stuff.
Never a high neckline.
No, please. I can't breathe. It makes me claustrophobic. But so it was interesting, right? Because when you notice something new, you don't have to decide immediately, oh, that doesn't work for me. That should be different. But I got to think about, hey, what was that about? That was an interesting, noticeable pattern to me. And it's not that it had to be a problem for anybody else, but I got really clear that was because I was subconsciously emulating the strength of men. And how when I was in executive roles, I was conscious about how tall or short I am compared to other people at 5', 6.5". I was thinking about, could I get taller by putting heels or boots on? How do I convey strength with my gestures? Was it important? At the time I had long hair, I changed my hair length a lot too. So it was always pulling it back off my face, right? It was like, wow, I was doing this interesting kind of almost costume change to raise money. And the truth is that didn't feel great once I thought about it. I thought, gosh, this doesn't feel super authentic to me. It's not necessary, and it's not making me feel like I can be my full self. So that's just an example where, you sort of do that noticing. You do that cost benefit analysis of what does it mean? Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it's just something to pay attention to. And then when you think, you know what? I think I'm doing it for reasons that feel icky. What do I do next? So it doesn't mean now I never wear pants. Like, it's not true. And I'm just conscious.
So thanks for sharing that story. I really appreciate it. And I think it's always helpful when we can link the conceptual, this idea about a desire or a goal or a motivation to be different, to arriving at that place where we're different, and that in between where real life is actually happening. When we come back, let's layer on teams and groups. What does it take for teams and groups to actually change and be different? Oh, and we're back.
Good to be back. I did never leave the room, to be clear, during this break, but I hope that people got a water, wandered around. I don't know what they do.
Mostly adjusted my pillows.
When I'm listening to podcasts, I'm usually unloading and reloading the dishwasher or folding laundry.
Oh, I'm usually getting ready for the day.
Yeah.
Every morning, I'll listen to my programs. So right as we were coming to a break, I thought of a story that was about how I changed.
Sure.
So I wanted to give a little tangible example for me. So I am someone who is single. I don't have any kids, and sort of being in a long-term partnership or having kids is not in my immediate future. I'm absolutely interested in dating. And right now, the construction of my life isn't one of a long-term relationship with a house and kids.
Right.
I have supervised tons of people who are in the process of getting married, having babies, or already in the process of forming a family. This is hard because I think I haven't talked a lot. I've talked implicitly in the world about this, but I haven't talked explicitly about it before. There was a period of time where I was finding it really irritating to supervise people who had kids and people who had partners, because I thought all the time, y'all just get to leave whenever you want. You get to blame things on the people you're married to or the children that you have, and I just have to be here and get everything done because I don't have those things. And that was actually starting to get sort of exhausting, being frustrated at a whole kind of family.
Right.
was getting frustrating for me. And I started to think about my values, my work in the LGBT rights movement. And when I think about things I believe in self-determination. I believe consenting adults should be able to form a family in whatever way makes sense for them to thrive.
Yeah.
And then I thought being crabby at people who have kids all the time is outside of my values.
Yeah.
And so first I had that thing I said about like catch yourself thinking. I had to catch myself thinking that and say that's outside of my values.
Right.
Behaving in accordance with this line of thinking is outside of my values. It came from somewhere. I think it probably came from capitalism. I think it came from a society that sort of rewards single men for working really hard.
Mm-hmm. A workaholism culture for sure in the U.S. Yeah.
So I had to stop that and be like, that is outside of my values. Self-determination and the creation of families that work for you. Like, go on and create your family. Because when I create mine, I want to sort of also work places that agree you should leave this place and go be with these people who need you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that for other folks who may be thinking as managers, like, how do I get out of a line of thinking? You have to match it to a set of values.
And I think what you just sort of put a pin in there, Alfonso, that I think is super helpful is just like you were mentioning when you were talking about your meditation practice, we can reprogram our reactions and our responses. So it is that you caught yourself, you're like, wow, there's a pattern because I'm actually not just thinking about this once. It's coming up over and over again. It doesn't feel good to be thinking this way.
Right.
And you and I have talked over and over again about just the deluge of messaging we are getting from the media, the internet, our workplaces, our gas stations. Just being out in the world means we're getting a lot of information. And so we are always these filters of information. And for you to say, gosh, it even feels funny to be thinking things outside of my values. What's that about?
Right.
And that reprogramming to say, you know you are a godfather, a brother, a son, a friend. I was with you at the DMV when you had to get your license to be a person who can marry people. Officiant?
Officiant.
Yeah.
I'm official.
You've married multiple sets of people. So it's that idea of like, okay, something in my patterns is out of whack because I am excited to celebrate milestones with people. And, I've said to you, I said it when I went to go and get my IKEA discount recently, even me as a person is a family.
Right.
So it's also that recognition of how do we get all families to be recognized and appreciated and do that stuff we need to negotiate in the workplace, which is who gets to run out of the office when, who is expected to cover. So it means, there is something to deal with, and how do we come back to a values-aligned practice to deal with it?
Love makes a family. That's a callback.
It sure can.
But you were kind of laddering us up to this conversation about how do groups or teams change.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how are we with each other, who gets to leave the office, et cetera, right?
Yep.
So we've been using this family example, and we don't have to stick with it. But, there's my own transformation and change when I realize something's out of alignment with values or far away from a goal.
Yep.
But then there's when we as a team have claimed goals about being different and really staying laser focused on what is required to actually be different, because we work with so many teams and we usually get to people, or folks find us right about the time that they're pretty good at talking about what could or should be different, or who it is or what kinds of people need to be different. So for me, when I think about how could we behave differently when it comes to how caretakers get treated, for example, on a team, I think I have to believe that we can be different.
Yeah.
So if I'm walking around mad at this place or mad at this team, I'm like, well, I'm doing my transformation, but I don't think you people could ever transform. I should probably get the heck off that team.
Yeah. If you're feeling holier than thou on more days than not, it really might not be a good fit for you.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? I think that for me, it's always so important to remember that teams are made up of this pile of individuals, right? So it would drive me nutty when folks would say, the board. And I'm like, okay, that's like a lot of different people. They don't behave like one amoeba kind of a thing. So even, for example, on our team, we have 2 people right now who are parents, soon to be 3, and they have different kids and they have kids at different ages. And so we're also not going to make an assumption that all the people with kids need or want the same thing or want to be treated in the same way. And so part of, I think, what's great when we think about how teams change is to really talk about our goals out loud. So if we talk about having goals of finishing things on time and on budget, we talk about a deep desire for our staff to be regularly healthy, well-fed, and well-slept, because we're just not as good at our job if we're not. And then what it looks like to sort of acknowledge some of the different dynamics of what it looks like to have different people with different needs on a team. So that's how you can navigate and negotiate them. I think way too often we think polite is avoiding and assuming everybody will just get taken care of. But what makes you laugh about that? Yeah.
Thanks for saying the word acknowledge. You have been quoting our friend Sarah Schoenwald up and down all across town. Because,
shout out, Sarah.
Yes, because Sarah reminds us that part of change is to stop being in a fight with reality. Yeah. That this is how it is. And so
now what?
If we want to be different about it, let's build a practice and some protocols and also grieve the past.
Yeah.
So for folks who maybe found themselves in a place of comfort on a team or a place of privilege or a place of having a lot of positional or identity power, it's necessary for us to also together grieve the past. The way we used to be was working to achieve something.
Yeah.
That felt good or comfy or exciting for me for a while.
Right.
So it's also okay as a team to say, like, how do we want to process and wrestle with and grieve that this thing that felt so comfortable and familiar is no longer. And I know this next way of being is absolutely essential to getting to our goals.
Yeah, because it's this idea of saying something about us is different or has changed, something about what we're trying to accomplish is different or has changed. We missed when it felt easier for some reason. But then when we go back to think, wow, it's more complicated the bigger team we have, but boy, we can get more done with the team we have. And one more example just occurred to mind because I think you've really helped me with some change. So I'm somebody who used to be married and now am not. And you were noticing that one of the subconscious outcomes of that is that I wasn't regularly scheduling vacation, right? Because it used to be that I had this household where we were like figuring out family vacations. And you were like, Trina, you're the last person to put your time off on the calendar. It's actually making it really hard for the rest of us to plan. And I was like, oh, shoot, I totally forgot. And we still have the value of rest and restoration. But we noticed because something for me changed, I needed to be able to participate differently because the team needed to know when I was literally going to be around and when I wasn't. So I think it's also a cool way to help each other when we say, okay, what for you has changed? What is different? Do we need the same things? And to also not just wait until there is a big new problem, but there are certain things we have on agendas that we regularly check in about. We say, hey, once a quarter, should we talk in again about, how we're doing finances and how we're doing communication and if we're getting too many emails? Like there's stuff that is worth revisiting to make it a matter of course so that it is, let's check in. Do any of these things need to evolve? If so, how can we all contribute?
So I'm curious what our community out there is doing to dig into individual change and team change. If you're interested in jumping in on the conversation, you can tweet us at Team Dynamics LLC or send in your thoughts and questions to team@teamdynamicsmn.com.
We would love for you to click that subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. We would still really appreciate more iTunes reviews. It just helps get our podcast in front of some more people. So take 30 seconds, write down a couple sentences about what this podcast has meant to you so far. We'd really appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Make good choices. Behave is produced by Levi Weinhagen in Studio G at the Glenn Nelson Center. Now I can do my ASMR.
The weirdest stuff for me. Yeah, do it just do it for Trina.
Trina. What are you doing today?
You have a strange relationship.